Hello, 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 hello. Lovely to be back. Lovely to see you all. Thank you for joining me for this next instalment of The Fury Part 2, otherwise known as The Storm. Bit late for a recap, but I think the last thing that happened was that Brick was having this catastrophic battle with Rilke, zapping all over the world. I think they ended up in Brazil and basically just destroyed Rio. And Brick's just realised that he can't defeat Rilke by himself, so he's going to go and have to ask for some help. So he's gone to ask the others. He's zapped back to ask Daisy and the others, although he hasn't got there yet. Daisy and the others are trying to fight the man in the storm, which is very, very difficult because he's underground, but I do think he has sensed them and he's now coming to get them. So we shall crack on. Probably about 3 parts left, I would say. I'll see how far we get today. Daisy, San Francisco, 3:01 p.m. He's coming. Howie had barely finished speaking when Daisy heard a pistol crack in the air above the forest. She looked up through the branches as a streak of black lightning split the sky in two, so dark that it scarred her retinas. A second followed, clouds of darkness seeping from the broken air like ink spilled in water. Thunder dripped down from the ruptured sky, filling the forest with noise. "Get ready," said Cal. "Whatever happens, stay together, yeah?" The sky was now filthy with smoke, gouts of ugly black fire spraying from the centre of the chaos like poisoned solar flares. A shape was forming in the churning madness, 2 huge wings that beat with enough strength to crack the trunks of the trees, strip them of every single needle. The beast roared as it pulled itself free, an inward roar like a deafening asthmatic breath. Its face was hidden by smoke, but Daisy could see the silhouette of its mouth there, the darkest thing in the sky. "Stay together," Cal said again, shouting now. "How do we do this?" Daisy glanced at him, then at Howie, then at Marcus, who held Adam in his skinny arms. They were all staring at her, waiting for an answer. But why? Why did they think she knew what to do? We've got builders in, by the way. Sorry about the weird noises. That isn't me farting. But why did they think she knew what to do? She was only 12 years old. She wasn't heroic or strong or really all that clever either. She didn't know anything. She didn't know. Only she did. The truth was somewhere deep inside her, yelling as loud as it could, telling her that if they stood their ground here and tried to fight the man in the storm, then they would all die. She could almost see it. Marcus and Adam first, blown into dust because they didn't have their angels yet. Then her, because she was so tired. Cal and Howie would give it everything they had, but it wouldn't be enough. Not against that. The beast was hauling itself from the emptiness behind the world, tearing reality to shreds. That same horrid feeling seeped out with it, sucking all the warmth from the day, all the goodness, making Daisy feel like she could just cry and cry and cry and never stop. There was nothing above her but an upside-down ocean of boiling tar, the sun a faint halo. It was as if night had fallen, suddenly and without warning. The man's eyes were dark spotlights that scoured the forest, searching for them. Its gasping breath sucked up trees and roots and rocks. It hadn't seen them yet, though. "We need to go," she said, "right now." "What?" Cal said. "We can fight it. There are 3 of us. We did it back in London. We can do it again." "Wait," she told him, but Cal had already shed his human skin, a blast furnace erupting in the hollows of his eyes, spreading out over his body. His wings thrust up from his back, a burning beacon that turned night into day once again. The beast shifted his lightless gaze to where they stood, and she could almost sense the rancid joy there as he realised he'd caught them. Daisy dived into her head, unlocking the door and letting her angel out. Howie did the same, erupting into flame. She looked up with her angel's eyes and saw the man attack with a fist of smoke. It hammered down like a meteor, impossibly fast. She reached out with her mind and grabbed time in her burning fingers. It was like trying to hold back a Doberman on its lead. She could feel herself being dragged along behind it. But she dug her heels in, hearing the aching groan of the universe as its rules were broken, every single atom shuddering in protest. "I can't hold it," she said, seeing the sky fall in slow motion, waiting for the moment it struck her and everything ended. Cal knew what to do, though, opening a door and pulling them through, first Marcus and Adam, then Howie, then her, letting it slam shut behind them. Daisy looked back as reality closed, seeing the knuckles of liquid night strike the ground where they'd been, exploding trees into splinters. Then time shook itself free from her grasp, her tummy doing a dance as they burned themselves back. Through the flurry of glowing embers she could see the others, 2 angels who glowed like molten steel, plus Adam and Marcus wrapped in each other's arms, blue fire burning beneath the skin of their chests. The world lurched back into place, fluttering for a moment like a piece of stage scenery about to topple. When it had settled, she made out a landscape of ice and snow, a ridge of mountains jutting from the horizon like teeth. It was almost dark here. Daisy lowered herself to the ground, switching off her angel to let it rest. As soon as she regretted it. It was freezing here, the wind like a dead person's fingers running up and down her back. Little warning, said Marcus, wiping puke from his mouth. He and Adam were doubled over, a pool of white sick beneath them. I don't mind being dragged all around the world, but give me a chance to prepare, yeah? Never mind the puke, I think I might have just shat myself. Daisy laughed through a shiver. Adam ran to her and she wrapped her arms around him. Could have brought us somewhere warmer too, said Marcus, his teeth chattering. Sorry, Cal replied. I haven't exactly got the hang of this yet. Besides, it's quiet. Nobody around to try and kill us. He sighed. We should have fought it. Yeah, said Howie, shaking his head. Now it knows we're scared. We couldn't have won, said Daisy. It would have been suicide. The word caught in her throat. Images of her mum lying dead in the bed. We would have hurt you. We weren't strong enough, she said. How do you know, said Howie. Mate, said Cal, that's enough. None of us have any idea what's going on. But Daisy, she knows things. She has, right from the start. You can do what you like, but I trust her. Cal flashed her a smile and she returned it, although it was quite difficult because the muscles in her face were frozen. Howie just swiped an arm through the air, dismissing them, turning away to study the distant mountains, nestled in twilight. We can beat him, Daisy said, but we need everyone. We need Brick and Rilke. Rilke, said Marcus. She has to be dead by now, after what he did to her. You and Adam too, Daisy went on. We need your angels to hatch. Yeah, I've been trying, said Marcus, prodding himself in the chest. Bloody thing isn't paying the slightest bit of attention to me, though. I must have got the laziest angel in the whole, I don't know, angel place. Why'd you call them angels? Howie said over his shoulder. You know, said Cal. Fire, wings, flying, beating the crap out of a big bad devil in the sky. Pretty obvious, really. They're not, though, are they? The new boy said. I mean, angels aren't real, for one, and if they are, they're good. Like, totally nice and stuff. This feels different, this thing. He held out his hands, as if they still had fire sprouting from them. Makes me feel like I kind of want to blow stuff up. I don't think they're like in the Bible, said Cal. We spoke to a priest a few days ago. He stopped, frowning. Wait, no, it was this morning. He shook his head like he couldn't believe it. Anyway, he said, well, I don't remember, to be honest. I was in a pretty bad way, but some people think the Bible's based on things people saw like centuries ago, stories that got passed down. So, said Howie when Cal didn't continue. So, you know, this must have happened before, these things made of fire, fighting that thing made of smoke, or whatever it is. People saw it and told their kids and so on, and they got the name angels, yeah? Howie shrugged. Does it matter, said Marcus. All we know is they're here in us, and they want to kick ass. End of. You sure? Said Howie. What if they're on his side? What if we're supposed to be helping the man in the storm? What? Don't you start with all that, said Cal. Bloody heard enough from Rilke, and look where it got her. Howie held up his hands in surrender. Just trying to cover all the bases, is all. Not easy going from walking around drunk on a beach to being possessed by a not quite angel who wants to save the world from certain destruction. You were drunk, said Daisy. How old are you? 13, he said. Plenty old enough. You still drunk, said Cal. Howie smiled. No, unfortunately. Think a bottle of rum might make all this a bit easier to cope with. Ew, said Daisy. They were silent for a while, and she turned inward, speaking to her angel. Is he right? Are you good? Have you been here before? It gave no answer, sitting there like a statue in her soul. She thought about what she'd seen earlier, the place they came from, a cold, dead place where nothing happened. It made her shudder. The idea that when this was over, whether they won or lost, her angel would have to return. It would be locked back in its cell until the next time it was needed. So how do we do it? Marcus asked. Might take days for my angel to wake up, and by then there won't be anything left to save. Not necessarily, said Cal. There is a way of motivating them. Yeah? Cal nodded. But instead of speaking, he seemed to beam out an image of it. Daisy saw him standing on the edge of a cliff, then tumbling over it. If his angel hadn't woken, then he would have died. It too. That had been a huge gamble. "Whoa, dude, no way," Marcus said. "You're insane. No way I'm making a leap of faith like that." "Just an idea," Cal said. "Got a better one?" "I might," said Daisy. She smiled at Marcus, firing up her angel, looking at the blue flame in his chest, the way it strained outwards, trying to reach her. He backed off, squinting against the brightness of her eyes, muttering, "Why do I think I might not like this?" Cal, Manang, Nepal, 3:15 p.m. "Trust me," Daisy said. "This doesn't hurt." Cal watched as she floated towards Marcus, her fire blazing but giving off no heat. Fingers of light reached up from the snow, crumbling away almost instantly. The air drummed with the strength of her, sounding like a dozen guitar amps racked up to full volume. Her eyes were like pools of liquid sunlight, and Cal still felt the fear tickle his spine, the unreality of it. Yeah, Marcus replied, taking an uncertain step back. "I got to take your word for that." Daisy didn't answer, just stretched out her hand and reached towards Marcus's chest. Cal couldn't see anything there until he flicked the psychic switch and fired up his angel. Suddenly Marcus was in an engine of parts, his chest filled with blue fire. Those flames seemed to stretch out towards Daisy, reaching for her. Her fingers were pure fire, ghosting through Marcus's shirt and into his skin. "Whoa, whoa, whoa!" Marcus yelled, stepping back, his path blocked by Howie. "That's not cool, Daisy, just, "It'll be okay," she said, persisting. The blade of her flattened hand sliced into him like a surgeon's scalpel, her fingertips touching the fire that burned in his chest. As soon as she made contact, there was a sharp crack, and Daisy flew back as though she'd had an electric shock. She was grinning, though, because Marcus's fire was spreading out from his chest, through his veins and out of his pores. He fought it, slapping his skin, dancing on the spot, yelping out swear words, cursing Daisy with every breath. "Don't fight it," she said. "See, it doesn't hurt, does it?" He didn't answer, just pranced about, kicking up drifts of snow. Those cold blue flames flickered up and down, trying to find purchase, until suddenly they roared to life, red and orange and gold. Marcus screamed into the air, the noise echoing off the distant mountains. His eyes filled with firelight, spitting out sparks. He dropped onto all fours as a wing broke free of his back, sweeping down, pulling him up at an angle. He turned awkwardly in midair, crashing back amongst them. Cal had to launch himself out of the way as Marcus squirmed on the ground, ripping out chunks of rock with his new hands. Only when his other wing slid free did he seem to calm down, hovering a metre or so off the ground. His chest was heaving, even though Cal was pretty sure they didn't actually need to breathe when they were this way. Marcus spun upright and lifted his hands to his face, studying his new skin. "Cool!" The syllable ricocheted between them, and Marcus clamped a hand to his mouth. "Indoor voice," said Daisy, inside her head. This one," he replied, inside his head. His words in Cal's head, weak but growing stronger. "Whoa, it's insane, man. It's got to be a dream." "If it is, we're all having it," said Cal. "You okay?" "Yeah, I'm cool. It's like being on Valium or something. It makes you feel, I don't know, calm." "What's Valium?" Daisy asked. "Chill pills," said Howie. "I thought it would be different, though," Marcus went on, his wings outstretched above his head, filtering the cold sunlight into filaments of gold. "I figured I'd feel it in there, you know, like I was possessed or something, but it's not like that at all. It's like I'm Superman." "You're too skinny to be Superman," said Cal. He turned to Daisy. "How did you know how to do that?" "I just did," she replied. "I think the angel showed me." "I wish he'd showed you before I jumped off a bloody cliff," Cal said. "That would have been helpful." Daisy laughed, the sound rising up over the beating of their hearts, like birdsong after a storm. "Sorry," she said. Cal laughed too, and God, was it good. It made him feel about 10 tons lighter. Daisy knelt down beside Adam, her burning hand resting on his shoulder. The little boy didn't look scared, didn't look much of anything, really, but his big eyes were full of trust as he gazed at her. "Will you be okay?" she asked him. "You don't have to do it if you don't want to, but it's not scary, Adam. They're here to look after us." "Just leave him," said Howie. "He's a kid. He won't be any good in a fight anyway." That was probably true, but even if he didn't fight, at least the angel would keep him safe. The little flame in his chest was straining out towards Daisy, and she gently pushed her hand towards it. I'm here for you, okay? Don't be scared. Don't be scared. She made contact, releasing another supernova of light and sound. Cal had to turn away this time, and when he looked back he saw Daisy and Adam in the air, leaving a trail of billowing flame in their wake. The little boy was struggling. Cal didn't so much see this as feel it, but Daisy held on to him, refusing to let go. Thunder ripped across the sky, then a flash of lightning as Adam turned. After a minute or two, both angels descended, not quite touching down on the snow. "You okay?" Cal asked. Adam nodded, his eyes two pools of molten ore, unblinking. "He was such a brave boy," said Daisy. "I knew he would be." Adam smiled up at her, his wings twitching above his head. Cal waited, wondering if he would speak now that he didn't have to open his mouth. There was no sign of him, though, in the jumble of voices in his head. Whatever the boy had been through when the fury began, it had broken more than just his voice. "Give him a chance," Daisy said, collecting Cal's thoughts like butterflies in a net. "He'll speak soon, I know he will." Cal nodded, and for a moment they hung there, all five of them, their wings arcing up into the fading day, the tips almost touching. Their angels scattered light and sound across the snow, making everything appear to be dancing. Even the mountains rumbled against the horizon, trembling as though they were afraid. And they should be, Cal thought. "Because we're ready now." "Almost," said Daisy. "Yeah, we need a plan or something, don't we?" asked Marcus. "Some tactics and stuff." "I've got a plan," said Howie. "Yeah?" Marcus turned his blazing eyes to the new boy. "Cool, what?" "Don't die." "That's great, mate," said Cal, but he was laughing again, the sound rushing up from inside him, warm against the chill of the angel. "Don't die. That's a plan?" "Yeah," said Howie, laughing too. "Whatever happens, however bad it gets, don't die." They laughed as quietly as they could, the air between them shuddering and shimmering with the force of it. Even Adam had joined in. Cal wondered what people would think if they could see them here, five creatures carved from cold fire, giggling and snorting, their wings wobbling overhead. That image made him laugh even harder, and he had to turn away, stare at the mountains to try to rein it in. "You guys are nuts," said Howie. "Completely and utterly off your damned heads, you know that." "Yeah," said Marcus. "I think we've known it for a while, mate." "You don't have to be mad to work here, but it helps," added Daisy, and it set off a fresh peal. "What? My mum used to have a sticker that said that. I didn't really understand it until now." "So," said Cal, feeling the tears in his eyes freeze, dropping to the snow beneath him like diamonds. "No plan. No idea what's going on. What's left to do?" "Just one thing," Daisy replied, staring past Cal, past the mountains, over continents and oceans. "We need to find Brick. Rilke, too." "He isn't coming back," said Cal. "I know you have faith in him, Daisy, but trust me, right now Brick is about as far away from the man in the storm as it's possible to get, and we are the last people he wants to see." Brick. San Francisco, 3:18 p.m. They had to still be there. They had to help him. Brick followed the path he'd made just minutes before, on autopilot, letting his angel guide him through the space behind the universe. When he was spat back into the real world, though, it was night instead of day, and where the forest had once stood was now a featureless expanse of dirt that stretched all the way to the broken horizon. Wind thumped against him as he tried to land, like fists, the hum of his angel's heart so loud that it took him a moment to notice the rumble of thunder overhead. The man in the storm hung in the sky, looking like a giant crow in a nest of darkness. His wings towered out to either side of him, made of a fire the colour of smoke and oil. Between them was a gyre that turned and turned, a tornado that sucked up everything in sight. Brick felt its cold touch on his skin, wrenching him up along with the fracturing rock of the hillside. He tumbled in midair, calling out with his mind and his voice together, barely able to hear himself. It was like he was a flea being sucked into a jet engine. There was no sign of the others. Where the hell were they? They'd flown away and left him, the selfish bastards. They'd left him to die. He fought to control his wings, beating them to try to pull free of the current. It was too strong, its pull relentless, dragging Brick up into the man's mouth. He swore, the word breaking free of his lips like a cannonball of light, slicing across the land in completely the wrong direction. "Help!" he screamed, trying to burn himself away as he had with Rilke. Rilke, she'd been a puppy compared to this. "Somebody, please, help me!" He Tried to hear Daisy's voice, Cal's, anyone's, but it was as though his ears had been pummeled into mash. The entire universe turned around him, growing darker and colder, closing around his head. He was spinning too fast to even see where he was going, the man's vast, grinding maw appearing then disappearing with impossible speed. He unfurled his wings to steady himself, swiping a hand through the air and lobbing a gout of energy at the thing above him. He opened his mouth and cursed it, hurling his fury at the beast. The man in the storm didn't even seem to feel it, that relentless turbine breath still sucking him upwards. Brick cartwheeled, the earth so far beneath him now he could see the curve of the horizon. He pumped his wings, his legs, his hands, as though he was swimming, desperately trying to get purchase, but the current of air was merciless. "No, I won't let you," he screamed. The world was growing dark as he was pulled into the storm clouds, the noise of the man's mouth like metal fists pummelling his brain. "I won't!" He felt like a screaming child, picked up and dragged away by a parent. He felt so small, so powerless, so pathetic, so angry. All his life he'd been furious with the world. He'd carried that anger around with him everywhere he went, never able to let it go. His anger was the reason he'd been where he was when the fury struck. It's why all this had happened to him. And now it was going to kill him. No, it didn't have to be that way. He didn't have to be angry. Maybe that's how they functioned, the angels. Maybe that's why they tried to numb everything in your head. Maybe they only worked if you weren't angry, weren't sad, weren't happy, weren't afraid. Emotions, they were so human. They just got in the way. How many times had he told himself that just to calm him down? To try and let the anger fizzle away? Do it now, Brick. Do it now, or you're a dead man. He closed his eyes, trying to ignore the rush of wind in his ears, the cold, damp air that clung to his body like soil, like he was in a grave. "Be calm," he said. His heart didn't obey, drumming a frantic rhythm in his chest, feeling as if it was about to go pop under the pressure. Just let it go. He forced himself to think about the beach back at Hemingway, the beautiful ocean, as flat and brilliant as tin foil, nothing there but warmth and silence and stillness. Sure enough, the boiling rage in his gut began to ease, the flare in the centre of his brain fizzling out. In its absence he could sense the angel, occupying every cell of his body, waiting for him to understand, to do the right thing. There was still something unpleasant coiled around his gut, but he figured this was as close as he was going to get. Adjusting his wings, he turned to face the storm, battening down the hatches against the swell of emotion. He could feel something else burning up from inside him, from inside the angel, a surge of cold heat. It sliced up his windpipe and detonated from his lips, so powerful that it set fire to the air. The word carved a path of flame, leaving a trail like a missile as it vanished into the smoke. He waited for the explosion, for the man's face to melt, for him to bellow out a cry of defeat. But nothing happened. Brick opened his mouth, waiting for his angel to reload. That tickle of fear was still there, the growing rage. He panicked, fighting the pull of the man's breath, his wings beating like a swan's. A barb of black lightning flashed from the vortex, so dark that it was like a tear in reality. It snapped down towards Brick, too fast for him to avoid, cracking as it impacted with his wing. The pain was so severe, so unlike anything he'd ever felt, that at first it didn't even register. Then it hit him, an agony that rocked him to his very core, which seemed to emanate not from his body, but from the angels. They screamed together as another whip crack snaked down, punching through his back. Brick looked over his shoulder, saw a darkness latched onto his other wing, gripping it like a kid with a mayfly. He reached behind him, trying to grab hold of it, but he was spinning too fast, rising up and up and up towards the tornado. There was a tearing sound, another bolt of white-hot pain, and when he looked again, he saw his wing flutter past him, a sheet of pale fire that bucked and curled on the wind, fading. His angel screamed again, no power in its voice this time, and, wingless, Brick tumbled up into the storm. Oh no! Poor Brick, poor angel. Rilke, Rio de Janeiro, 3:22 p.m. Oh. Sorry, I got one of those really annoying nails that just won't quite come off. I don't usually bite my nails, although sometimes I do. Rilke, Rio de Janeiro, 3:22 p.m. Come out, wherever you are. Rilke peeked behind the skin of the world, trying to find the boy with wings. Was that what she was doing now, playing hide-and-seek with Schiller? No, he's dead. Remember? Something told her. She reached up with a hand made from glowing ether and touched her forehead. There was a hole there, like a third eye, about the size of her finger. She couldn't for the life of her remember how she'd got it. A boy with wings, a boy with fire for hair, the same boy who killed your brother. And she almost saw him in the confusion of her thoughts. A tall boy called Brick. But why was she playing hide-and-seek with him? It didn't make any sense, and when she tried to think about it, her head pulsed with waves of discomfort, her thoughts jamming as though a stick had been thrust between two cogs. She let it go. It would come back to her soon enough. She was probably just tired and... She looked around, seeing a desert, almost like a beach, only the sand beneath her was all different colours, gold and white and grey and red. Little coils of firelight snaked up towards her feet, like fingers reaching for her, only to collapse again after a second or two. She could see every single grain there, and inside them all were little cities of light and matter. It was mesmerising. Focus, Rilke, she told herself. Find the boy, don't you remember? He broke you. That was it. He'd broken her like she was a doll, and he'd broken Schiller too. That should have made her angry, but there was nothing inside her but an infuriating numbness, like being packed head to toe with cotton wool. That was what happened to broken dolls, though, wasn't it? Packed up and boxed away, or thrown in the bin. Something buzzed overhead, a fly, and she reached out with a hand that wasn't really her hand, her invisible fingers plucking the object out of the sky and crushing it. The fly fell to the ground, hitting the sand with a mechanical crash and bursting into flames. There were more of them up there now, hovering overhead, making a dull thud-thud-thud-thud-thud sound, and she swatted at them, bringing down two more before the rest hovered away. Great. Now she'd totally forgotten what she was supposed to be doing. She peeled open the world again, just like opening a door. Something had disturbed the air here, leaving a kind of golden ripple, almost like the wake a boat makes in water. The tall boy obviously wasn't very good at hiding. He'd left a trail for her to follow. "Got you," she said, grinning as she stepped through the door. Her body blasted into atoms, a sudden rush, like going over the top of a waterfall. Then she was whole again, the world locking back into place around her. She swiped a hand through the air to clear away the embers, trying to make sense of the chaos around her. The sky was alive, a storm in the shape of a man. He thrashed inside a roiling ocean of dark cloud, almost as though he was drowning up there. Something about him was familiar, but Rilke didn't know what. The wind here was incredible, a hurricane that did its best to suck her up. It looked like a vast field, one that had just been ploughed. In the distance was a hole in the world, as if something huge had burrowed up from the centre of the earth and crawled out of it. She stretched out, her wings locking herself in place, scouring the land to try and find him. A gunshot overhead. Was it a shotgun? No, it was too loud. 1,000,000 shotguns couldn't make a sound like that. She glanced up into the upturned ocean, seeing a speck of flame against the spiralling dark. It's him! She knew it. The boy made a fire. He was disappearing into the smoke, trying to hide from her. Don't let him go, her brain said. He broke you. He broke you. She wouldn't let him hide. Not now, not ever. She pushed herself up from the ground, pumping her wings, ascending towards the fire. The tall boy was struggling, tongues of black light wrapping themselves around him. One of them punched through his wings, ripping one away, and she could hear his scream over the ear-pounding clatter of the moving sky. He vanished into the spinning vortex of cloud, and she increased her speed. More of those forks of black lightning snapped past her, but she weaved through them, focusing on the only thing that mattered. Come out, wherever you are," she said again, giggling as she followed the burning boy into the darkness. Daisy, Manang, Nepal, 3:25 p.m. Are you ready? Cal asked the question, staring at her with his angel's eyes. All 5 of them stood in a circle, drenched in fire. The noise of their hearts was almost liquid, filling her ears, making her head feel funny. She was finding it hard to move as well, as though they were all magnets pushing against each other. She wondered what would happen if they all touched, whether it would be too much for this little world. She had a feeling they might just burn a hole clean through it. Daisy? She nodded, but it was a lie. She didn't feel ready at all. How could you ever be ready for something like this? Cal turned to the others. You guys? Marcus shrugged. Not like I've got anything else I need to be doing right now. Daisy reached out to Adam, her fingers throwing off bursts of static where they touched his face. He didn't seem to mind, smiling at her. His eyes seemed bottomless. She felt as if she could tumble into those twin pits of fire and never get out again. He doesn't have to come, said Cal. I mean, it might be safer if he stays here, if he waits for us. You'll be okay, won't you, Adam? Daisy asked. It would be more dangerous for him to be by himself. What if he was attacked by the Fury, or if the man in the storm decided to move again, went after him? We'll keep you safe. But you don't have to fight. As soon as we land, just stay hidden, okay? What do we do about Brick? Cal asked. He'll be waiting for us there, she said. She wasn't sure how she knew that, but she could almost see him drowning in darkness. He'd changed his mind. He'd come back to help them, and now he was fighting the beast on his own. She took a deep breath of air that she didn't really need, felt both her heartbeats drumming. The angel was doing a good job of keeping her calm, but she was still scared. She could feel it tickling her tummy. It made her feel weak, uncertain, and that made her wonder something else. I think, she started, then stopped, trying to make sense of her thoughts. What? Asked Cal. She chewed on it a moment more, then spat it out. I think we're supposed to be calm, she said. Oh, sure, said Howie. I always feel calm when I'm about to pick a fight with a creature that's trying to eat the world. No, Daisy said, I'm serious. It's like what you were saying about the chill pills. The angels keep us calm, stop the emotions getting in. That's how they fight, maybe. They can only do it if our emotions don't get in the way. Yeah, said Cal. When he shrugged, his wings bobbed up and down. I guess that makes sense. Daisy shook her head. All she had was her instinct, and what she'd just said felt right. So keep your emotions under control, said Marcus. Cool, check. Any other bits of advice? Cal said. She wished she had some, but there was nothing. Only Howie's don't die. That was about all they had. She shook her head, saying, sorry. Cal blew out a spluttered breath that made the air tremble. It all seemed so simple back in Fursville, he said. By comparison, I mean, all we had to do there was survive. It seemed like months ago, years even, that they'd been inside the theme park, but they'd left Hemingway that morning, less than 12 hours ago. It didn't make any sense to Daisy, except she understood that somehow time was different for the angels, different for them now too. For what seemed like forever, they all stood in silence, and she could see their thoughts as if they floated right in front of her. Fursville, riding the horses of the carousel, playing football. That was Cal, he always thought about football. Running down the pitch with the wind in his ears, a pretty girl watching from the stands, a picnic in a forest with a big bushy dog who kept trying to eat the sandwiches, another boy there who looked just like Marcus, his brother maybe. They were the memories they wanted to take with them, she realised, and she pictured her own, sitting in her back garden in a puddle of sun, smelling the lavender, her dad bringing out a tray of Chinese takeaway and a bottle of alcohol-free sparkling wine which they drank to celebrate her mum's good news, that the cancer had gone away. All of them alive with laughter, chasing each other between the bushes, then lying in the long grass side by side, breathing in the smell of it as they stared up through the branches. If, when she died, she could live inside any memory of her life, this would be the one she'd choose. The tickle of fear had become something else, a wedge of rock in her throat. Even past the dam the angel had built inside her, she could feel the tears about to break. Nice one, Daisy, way to forget about your emotions, she said to herself, hoping the others wouldn't hear her. They must have done, though, because Cal laughed. Come on, he said, before we all start bawling like babies. Speak for yourself, said Howie. He spread his wings, flexing them in front of the sun and turning its light into twists of amber. You doing the honours? Cal asked. Daisy nodded, taking Adam's hand, the air between their fingers crackling like a bonfire. She closed her eyes and opened up the world, a big enough hole to pull everyone through. Good luck, she said. Then they were gone. Cal. San Francisco, 3:32 p.m. In the split second they were moving, he tried to prepare himself, tried to steady his nerves. Then they were there. Reality clamping shut around him like a bear trap, sinking its jaws into him to try to lock him in place. They were back where they'd been before, the vast empty canyon which had once been a city off to his left, the ocean still thundering into it. The whole sky seemed to vibrate for a moment, a crack of thunder echoing across the land as physics adjusted to fit them in. The noise didn't last for long, though, swallowed up by the storm that raged overhead. The beast sat there in a throne of smoke, his wings stretching from horizon to horizon, his mouth resembling some immense, diseased moon that hung over the world. There was almost nothing else left of him, just strands of loose, dead flesh stretched impossibly long, fluttering out to his side like torn flags. His eyes were pockets of night. Those inverse searchlights scoured the ground, finding them in seconds. As soon as that sickly knot light washed over him, Cal felt as if he'd been punched in his stomach, in his soul, as if the impact had knocked every last drop of life out of him. He groaned at the horror of it, the complete and utter emptiness, knowing that this is what he would feel forever if the man in the storm swallowed him up. Cal felt a sudden gust of wind take hold of him, pulling him up, the beast's mouth like a vacuum cleaner. He spread his wings, trying to clamp down on the emotions, shouting for his angel to fight back. He didn't need to tell it what to do. A sound barrelling up his throat fired from his mouth like a mortar shell. It ripped upwards, scorching a path through the angry clouds until it exploded against the creature's face. More shouts followed his own. Daisy hung in the air to his side, screaming in her voice and the angel's. Marcus and Howie were to his right, their heads recoiling like pistol barrels every time they barked out a shot. The air between them and the storm turned to liquid fire, boiling and hissing like a living thing. The beast unleashed another cry, this one like some deep-sea leviathan. "It's working!" Even though Daisy's voice was in his head, he still had trouble hearing it. "Just keep shooting him!" Cal beat his wings, rising up through the boiling skies. He opened his mouth, letting his angel hurl out another word. This one slammed into the beast's swirling face, tearing out a chunk of smoke and dark matter the size of an office block. It was instantly sucked into the spinning void like the creature was eating itself. The motion of its mouth stuttered and slowed, the bone-shaking rumble dimming for a second before powering back again. Something whipped out of the darkness, a barbed flail of black lightning which cracked the air right in front of Cal's face. He tumbled down, blinded by the black scar that it left on his retinas. He heard another pistol shot, twisting his body to avoid it, blinking the world back into view. Daisy and the others were above him, darting back and forth like fireflies as they unleashed blow after blow. They were aiming for the beast's eyes, a barrage of explosions tearing at those searchlights. The man squirmed in his storm, that inward breath guttering out and restarting again and again. He was panicking, Cal realised. He was afraid. He pumped his wings, tearing up towards Daisy. They were so tiny compared to the man in the storm, but that was working in their favour. Every time he snapped out a fork of lightning, they would dart out of the way, his attacks too slow, too clumsy. Cal swept his arms forwards, punching out with invisible fists, hammer blows that thudded into the beast. It was like watching a battleship fire off every single weapon in its arsenal. The sky moved, the whole thing falling earthwards, the impossibility of it making Cal scream. He threw up his hands in front of his face as a shockwave of energy smacked into him, spinning him away like a cricket ball. He hit the ground, ploughing through tree roots and rocks, exploding everything into dust until he came to a halt. Even past the angel, he could feel the pain. He sat up, seeing the man in the storm against the horizon, so far away. The sky was still falling, only it wasn't the sky. It was the creature's wings. Those enormous plumes of rancid fire swept down, unleashing a hurricane. He couldn't see Daisy anywhere, or the others. Everyone had been blown away. He sat up, giving his angel a moment to find its strength. Then he pushed himself off the ground, throwing himself back into the melee. It was too late. Those wings rushed down a third time, and the man in the storm vanished in a blizzard of black embers. Brick, San Francisco, 3:40 p.m. It was like being inside a washing machine at full spin, and he had nothing left to fight with. His angel was dying. It had been too badly injured. Brick tried to stretch out his wings, but one was missing, the other hanging down, torn and useless. Fortunately, his armoured skin still burned, although the fire was weaker now, barely strong enough to illuminate the funnel of smoke and cloud around him. Even if he'd still had his wings, they wouldn't have done him any good. He could no longer see where he'd come from, or where he was going. Something loomed up in the darkness, too fast to avoid. He curled up, punching through it, seeing chunks of masonry shatter into dust. There were other things here, caught like scraps of food in the man's gullet. People, too, or what was left of them, pieces of gristle that still had human faces snagged on the edge of the throat. They flashed past him, hundreds of them, thousands maybe. These were just the dregs. How many millions more had been swallowed? And he was one of them. Stupid, angry, pathetic Brick. It wasn't like anyone would miss him anyway. No, he was already a ghost, already forgotten. Don't think it, he told himself, feeling his emotions cut through the heart of the angel. It'll make you weak. You have to fight. He flailed, thumping through a vast floating mountain of rock. On the other side of it, he suddenly saw where the tunnel narrowed, ending in a point that radiated utter darkness. Clouds of smoke and atomized matter spiraled around it, sparking off bolts of lightning. The roar of the storm was fading, the silence that pulsed from the hole the most terrifying thing Brick had ever heard. Everything was wrong here. Time seemed to be breaking, everything slowing down as it circled the drain. It wasn't death in there. It could never be anything so simple. It was eternity, infinity, an ageless gulf of nothing that he would never, ever be able to escape. It was a black hole, a pinprick in reality that would devour everything, that would eat and eat and eat until there was nothing left. No, he shouted, the angel's voice swallowed up without so much as a tremor, as if he'd been muted. Brick shrieked, his arms cartwheeling, his stunted wing flapping. He managed to flip himself over, looking back the way he'd come, the walls of the tunnel corkscrewing relentlessly, dragging more and more of the world towards its end. There was something else up there, a flicker of fire against the madness. Oh God, please, 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 Brick said. The shape grew closer, exploding through chunks of floating debris. It had to be Daisy or Cal. It has to be, please, God. Come out, wherever you are, said Rilke. And Brick felt his heart sink into his feet. She swept towards him, her wings opening at the last second like a dragon's. She gazed at him with the molten pools of her eyes, grinning. That third eye still blazed in her forehead, the one he'd made, gunks of fire dropping from it as if her brain was melting. There you are, she said. I found you. Oh, please, Rilke, Brick said. The contrast of silence in one ear and thunder in the other was making him feel sick. Please help me, pull me free. Rilke cocked her head, her grin, that's a typo there, her grin sliding away, slack and loose. Help you, she said, her voice scratching across the surface of his brain. Why? Because I'm dying, he yelled, clawing at the air, trying to reach her. It's going to kill me. But you killed me, she said, beating her wings to fight the current of air. You snapped me in half. Now Mother will be furious. I'm sorry, he said. She was mad. She was broken. I'm sorry, Rilke. I didn't mean to. And Schiller, you broke him too. No, I didn't, he said, feeling himself slip closer to the hole. He felt as if he was being stretched, as if he would be pulled into ribbons. I didn't. It was him, the man in the storm. You have to believe me. No, it was you, the boy with wings, she said, studying him with those blazing orbs. No, I don't have wings, he shouted, trying to twist around to show her his back. It wasn't me. Look, how could it be me? She frowned, the hum of their angels making the whole tunnel shake. He broke me too, Brick stuttered. The man with wings, with huge wings. He's broken me and now he wants to kill me. We have to fight him, Rilke. Together, please. Where is he? Rilke said, flying closer, almost close enough for him to touch. He reached out, not with his arms, but with his mind, trying to latch onto her, to anchor himself, but he couldn't work out how. We're inside him, he said. He's trying to eat us. Don't be silly, Shill, she said, giggling. He can't eat us. He will, Brick said. Bolts of white light were detonating in his vision, fireworks. His fire was fading, fast. His angel was dying. He hates us. He's going to break us all unless we fight back. Please, Rilke, don't let me die. I'm your brother. Schiller, she said. Is that you? I can't see so well. Brick felt something curl around his waist, an invisible tentacle that reeled him towards the burning girl. The black hole didn't want to let him go, clinging on to every cell in his body. It was as if he was coming undone, a piece of paper in water, dissolving. Rilke hauled him in, back into the roar and thunder of the storm, and he fell against her, holding her as a child clings to a parent. She hugged him for a moment, then recoiled. "You're not my brother," she said, her voice as cold as the inferno around her. "You lied to me." "I am," he said, praying she was crazy enough to believe him. "Don't you recognise me, sister?" She looked lost, the fire of her eyes flickering as the busted gears of her mind clanked and shook and tried to turn. The storm trembled, clouds of debris spilling from the walls of the tunnel. An almighty groan rose up all around them, then another explosion as though somebody was lobbing artillery shells at them. What the hell was going on out there? "Rilke, please, you have to get us out of here before it's too late." Her body trembled, as if she was having a fit, great waves of energy pulsing from her. When it was over, she grabbed him with the fingers of her mind, towing him along beside her as she pumped her wings and pulled away. The current attempted to suck them back, but she was too strong, cutting a path up the river. All around them the storm shook, rocked by thunder. He could sense something else, voices in his head. Daisy, Cal, the others too. Was it them? Were they attacking the storm? Oh, please, please be true, he thought as the clouds parted ahead, a shaft of weak, murky sunlight trickling through. "That's it, sis. You're beating him." She stopped, spinning him around in the air, her eyes blazing. "You're not him," she said. "You're not Schiller." He tried to squirm loose, wondering if his angel needed its wings to transport or teleport, whether he could just burn himself back to the ground the way he'd done before. Rilke's invisible fingers were like iron rods in his ribs, anchoring him to her. "Don't you dare!" Her shriek pummeled his brain, her grip on him growing stronger. He slapped at it with his hands, but there was nothing there to fight. His fire burned, but nowhere near as bright as Rilke's. "It is you! I knew it! You lied to me! You broke him! You broke us both!" Brick lashed out, an arrow of translucent flame slicing into the girl. Her psychic hold on him loosened, and he peeled open the world, ready to flee into the absence there. The man in the storm bellowed. Something was happening. Black lightning bursting from the walls, churning up the smoke. Then the world disintegrated around Brick, his scream guttering out as he was blasted into atoms and sucked into the void. Yeah, we've got time for a couple more. I might just have a drink. Oh. No tea today, I forgot. Daisy. San Francisco, 3:44 p.m. "We can't let him get away!" Cal's yell boomed across the deserted land, vibrating over Daisy as the agitated air rushed into the space where the man in the storm had just been. The sky was full of flakes of smouldering ash. Past them, though, the sun was starting to break through the thinning clouds. Its light spread almost nervously across the blackened earth, as if it was studying the damage that had been caused, feeling for survivors. There were none. How could there be? From up here in the sky, Daisy could see for miles in every direction, every scrap of life scrubbed away by the beast. The pit was still growing, straining against the flood of seawater that cascaded into it. Huge sections of land crumbled into the growing void. She wondered if the man in the storm had moved back underground, but she couldn't sense him there. No, it was more like he'd carved away so much of the world that it couldn't hold itself up anymore. She could sense him, though, a long way away from here. He had left a trail in the air, one that vanished in mid-air, a bit like a mouse's tail beneath a rug. If she lifted up the world there, she'd be able to see where he'd gone. Cal flew to her side. Howie and Marcus were there too, scanning the horizon. She looked down, panicking when she couldn't see Adam. The blast of relief when he hovered up behind her, almost made her cry. She wrapped her arms around him for a second, the air between them sparking in protest. Then she let him go. "I'm okay," she said. "I'm fine. We scared him, Cal. We must have done to make him run away like that." "Guy's a chicken," said Howie. "Come on," said Cal, "before he has a chance to recover." He didn't wait for her this time, his body exploding into incandescent dust. Daisy followed, using her mind to lift up the carpet, chasing the mouse's tail into the emptiness there. It was as though she'd been able to do this all her life, as natural as walking. A heartbeat later, the world shaped itself around them with a protest of cracks and rumbles. The embers tore free from the dispossessed air. That's what they were, she realised, the parts of the world that were burned away to make room for the angels. Through them, she saw the beast. He was hanging over another city, this one like something out of a fairy tale, full of old buildings and towers. A huge, dirty-looking river wound through it. There were people there, thousands of them, all staring and screaming at the storm and the thing that lived within it. Cal was a speck of flame against the brooding night, his angel's voice punching into it, echoing across the city below. Daisy hurled herself after him, feeling the others by her side. Even Adam was there this time. She understood that he didn't want to be by himself. The turbine of the beast's mouth was starting up again, the buildings below starting to disintegrate, rising in pieces. The river was like an upturned rainstorm, draining against gravity. The people too were being sucked up, just like those ants in the Hoover. Daisy reached out for them with her mind, trying to hold them down, but there were too many. They were too fragile, and they came to pieces under her touch. "I'm sorry," she said, the horror of it swelling inside her tummy, inside her chest. "Focus, Daisy," said Cal. "Switch your emotions off." She tried, swallowing them down. Opening her mouth, she unleashed a cry that tore through the clouds, slicing into the man's face. Cal was attacking the eyes again, Marcus and Howie unleashing shot after shot at the tattered remains of the monster's body. The wind was a fist, grabbing them and shaking them as it swept into the cavernous mouth. It took everything she had not to be carried away by it. The beast was fighting back, vomiting more of that horrible black lightning. The air was alive with it, none of the bolts coming close. Most were hitting the ground, blowing up like bombs, reducing the city to rubble. That endless breath was a howling cry, full of rage, so loud that it made every bone in her body tremble. "We're winning," she said, clamping down on the rush of excitement and relief, forcing herself to stay calm. "Keep firing!" They didn't need her to tell them. Cal had pretty much demolished the beast's face, chunks of dark matter pulling loose from its eyes, sucked into its own mouth. It seemed to be rebuilding itself, though, smoke filling the gaps and solidifying there. Daisy burned through the sky, letting her angel speak. The word was like a giant bullet cracking open the storm's skull, the force of it knocking her back. She flipped in mid-air, feeling another attack bubble up her throat and out of her mouth. There were so many explosions detonating against the storm that the man was more fire than smoke. There was no way he could survive much more of this. No way. And yet his fury was growing, boiling from him in huge black waves, healing the wounds they made. She loosed another cry, and this one was met by a whip crack of utter darkness. The two forces crackling as they cancelled each other out. It was using the lightning to block Cal's cries too, like a force field. Daisy dived, avoiding a finger of inverse light that snapped out to meet her. The ground rushed up, close enough for her to see the ruined city, the stains that had once been people. She turned at the last minute, the earth beneath her exploding as the man in the storm lashed out again. She pumped her wings, hurtling up through the roiling smoke, pausing when she saw a burst of fire inside the beast's mouth. The man in the storm howled again, that awful inward sucking cry. Something was happening in there. Brick, she realised, sensing him, and as soon as she called his name she heard his reply, a brittle scream for help. More fire from inside, as though the man in the storm had swallowed a swarm of fireflies. "Help me!" Brick yelled, his voice like distant thunder inside her head. "You hear that?" Cal said, appearing beside her. He looked exhausted, but his angel burned fiercely. "That's Brick!" Daisy lurched away from him as another sliver of lightning slashed the air between them. Cal opened his mouth and fired a word at it, the sound disappearing into the clouds around the beast, not even leaving a scar. "It's not working," he said. "He's too strong." He was right. They were hurting it, but not killing it, like wasps stinging the hide of an elephant. But they were doing everything they could, weren't they? Switching off their emotions, giving the angels everything they needed. What was she missing? What were they doing wrong? Over the howl of the storm, she heard Brick shout again. What was he doing in there? Cal asked. Daisy didn't know, only that he wasn't alone. Cal shook his head and she heard him call out, "I'm coming, Brick! Hang on!" "Wait, Cal!" She chased after him. Before she could reach him, though, the world grew dark. That's lines, another typo. A fist of smoke swung out from the storm, so big that it blotted out the last of the sunlight. Daisy screamed, burning herself out of the world before the smoke could hit her. She fizzled back into existence on the other side of the storm, the sudden shift of perspective making her dizzy. That immense bulk of darkness was dropping towards the ruined city, as though somebody was pouring 1 billion gallons of oil from the sky. Cal swept out of the way with Adam, Howie bursting into embers as he fled. Marcus wasn't so lucky. He looked up too late, loosed a cry that vanished in the smoke. Then it hit him, punching him into the ground, the fist bigger than the city that had once stood there. It didn't stop, funneling into the earth, pushing the boy deeper and deeper with a series of booming cracks. Daisy called out his name, but there was only a gaping absence where the boy's thoughts had once been. No! She lifted herself up, the anger like a living thing inside her. She opened her mouth, and this time the cry that broke free was powerful enough to blister the air, carving a path of fire right into the heart of the storm. There was a second where she thought her attack had died away, then an explosion detonated inside the beast, as if an atomic bomb had gone off. Huge clouds of gunk jettisoned from the sky, trails of poisonous smoke trailing earthwards. She reached out with her mind, slicing into the wound she'd made, grabbing anything she could find in there and ripping it out. Her angel's invisible hands wrenched and mauled the beast above her, bellowing like 1,000,000 wounded bulls. The rage boiled inside her, and this time she didn't hold it back, letting it fuel her. Oh, God, she thought. She'd been wrong. So wrong. They weren't supposed to hide their emotions. They were supposed to use them. She unlocked the door she'd closed against them, 100 different feelings sluicing up inside her. It was like a volcano, the fire raging, spewing out of her. She cried out again, and the whole sky seemed to shake. The hole it punched in the storm was huge and perfectly round, daylight pouring through it. The beast groaned, flexing its wings, a forest of lightning sprouting from its tattered flesh. It was going to vanish again. It swept its wings down, blasting out a wave of dust, but it didn't disappear. Instead, it lifted itself up, rising slowly, gaining speed with each clumsy stroke. "Where's it going?" she asked, sensing Cal swoop up beside her. A rain of dust and ash was falling like black snow. "It's running," Cal said, smiling. "Let's get this bastard." Maybe we should leave it there, and we'll carry on. Tomorrow. That's about an hour, and as a bit of a turning point, they've kind of figured out that if they use their emotions, they can increase the power of their angels. Yeah, we'll leave it there. That's a good chunk of the book done. We might get it done. We might get it done in one big go next time, but I'll see how I get on. I hope you enjoyed that. I can't remember if Marcus is dead or not. I'm really sad if he is, because I really liked him. But we shall find out. I hope you enjoyed that, and yeah, I'll come back hopefully. It's still half term. There's holidays over here, which is why it's a little difficult to get here and do it. But I will be back. I'll try and do it tomorrow, and get it finished. And if not, it'll be definitely before the end of the week. Anyway, I'll stop blethering on now. I hope you enjoyed that. I've said that like 3 times. My brain is broken. I'm like Rilke. Yeah. Take care of yourselves. Have a great day. And I would just like to finish by saying I hope you enjoyed that. See you soon. Bye.